Hey, what's up guys, Rep here. So believe it or not, we have another round of localizer related drama to cover today. In the past 24 hours alone, we have many more things to cover. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Now, how did we get here? Well, this week there's been a big debate about whether or not AI should replace localizers, where a lot of people don't have any sympathy for the localizers because they look at the vandalism they have committed against anime and manga for the past 2 decades through their mistranslations, and they just don't feel sorry for them. They really just don't. And there's been a definite fuel to the fire here where localizers have really divided themselves from their fans even stronger because in response to these criticisms being made on places like Twitter, these localizers and their supporters have been making unhinged and completely unlikable tweets that are just pissing people off even more and confirming that they have no respect for the mediums that they're translating and they have no respect for the fans that are supposed to consume that stuff. And I genuinely believe if it wasn't for the reaction of localizers over the past week, this thing might have died down a lot quicker. But now we're seeing clips like this resurface from 2020 even, where there was a Q&A featuring the My Hero Academia cast. This is a clip we looked at yesterday, where the voice actress Jamie Marchi would have some very interesting things to say in response to criticism about mistranslations in the medium. Let's give this a quick listen once again because the quote is just mind-boggling.
Well, I'm kind of scared to ask this question now because I don't want to bring down the room. So
okay.
This is more directed at Jamie, but all of you can answer.
Go,
all of
Jamie,
you
go. I'm
have,
excited
like,
about it.
I'm ready to bring down the room. Let's do it.
We need a spotlight.
So
on
Funimation
Jamie.
has come under, let's call it, criticism for how they choose to adapt their scripts for
like
a couple
unnecessary
of shows.
hate. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, and a lot of that I feel is directed at you unfairly.
Thank you.
So how would you like to respond to that kind of criticism?
To the criticism, like, I have a vagina. Deal with it.
So I genuinely believe that the responses from localizers has only sped up the reaction and interest in these related subjects to the point where you have mainstream channels like Asmongold reacting to the situation and putting a huge spotlight on these localizers and their mistranslations. And I genuinely believe it might not have gone that far if it wasn't for the fact that localizers are making themselves look like even bigger clowns in response to all these criticisms flying around on social media currently. And the person who was talking in the clip we just watched, that is Jamie Marchi once again, and she really is the embodiment of everything that anime and manga fans don't want in those mediums, okay? She is a person who clearly has no respect for source material, no respect for fans, and she has her own selfish agenda and wants to push that for her own personal reasons and selfish gain, okay? And really, in response to that clip, she has only made things worse. She is responding to people bringing up those comments from her Q&A and also some other localizations that she was involved in. Now, here's her response to criticism stemming from the clip, where this user would say, in quotes, "How would you like to respond to that kind of criticism?" And Jamie would say, "Oh, I have a vagina." And then this user says, "What an epic response to an audience that waits for a solid answer, not meme rage bait." Where Jamie would reply saying, "On a woman in anime panel, he asked what I would say to these people who criticize me. I answered his question, you don't have to like it, but I'm sure to answer honestly. If my answer makes you that angry, maybe you should just get over it." Now, this is something she has said to dozens of users over the past 24 hours. She keeps telling them to get over it. Just deal with it. Stop being sensitive. And these are people just simply pointing out A, mistranslations that she supported, and B, her weird comments in that Q&A. And all she says is get over it. And again, like I said in my previous video, she's not just a voice actress. She's actually the voice actress for the Funimation dub of Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid and the character Lukwa, who quite literally is the character that delivered this iconic line, the classic, "Oh, those pesky patriarchal societal demands were getting on my nerves, so I changed clothes." She is the one who delivered that line. Now, in response to this image floating around a lot over the past week, there is a question a lot of people have had. Clearly, Jamie, as the voice actress, supported and approved of this localization. But the question that remained is, was it her decision? Was she the one who changed this line? Did she write these words that she eventually provided in the dub? Well, we'll get her answer to that. And of course, in the process, she'll be trying to gaslight you into thinking something else. So here's this user once again replying saying, "Your entire stance comes from get over it, deal with it, suck it up attitude towards the audience that asked you the question in the first place. You are right, you did answer the question, but why do you feel like that's even an appropriate way to respond to that? Which, of course, yeah, is that really appropriate? Someone asks you, why do you, what do you think about this mistranslation? And you immediately start talking about your vagina. That's pretty weird to me, right? Like, that sounds even worse when you think about it that way. But anyways, Jamie would respond saying, because men do not get attacked like I do. The director of the show is a man, the producer, the head writer, yet I'm the only one attacked. I've been attacked for lines I didn't write. While the rage mob ignores the man who wrote the line, I have a vagina, get over it. In case that wasn't clear, guys, she's tripling down on that point. But anyways, a lot to unpack here. So, of course, this line makes it very clear that we're boiling this down to a specific line. The Dragon Maid localization and the line about the patriarchy. But anyways, so she starts off here saying, because men do not get attacked like I do. That's a lie. That's an absolute lie. You can look at my videos from this week and other people covering this subject. There are plenty of male localizers and male supporters of those localizations who are getting called out for these things. This has absolutely nothing to do with gender. I can't make this any more clear to people like Jamie. If this was a man making the same comments you did, he would be getting criticized the same level. If he went on there in an interview and said, I don't care about your feelings about mistranslations, I have a big sweaty nutsack, get over it. People would be clowning on him equally as Jamie. And going on throughout here, this idea that she didn't write this. She's heavily implying that she did not write these lines, which already contradicts with a lot of tweets she's made where she's trying to take ownership for making these localizations. But we'll see here that she is being incredibly disingenuous, and quite frankly, she's trying to gaslight people into thinking she didn't write the Dragon Maid line. Well, going forward, another user would say, since you're applying, do you think it's fair for the original writer or the fans to have the words and meaning of the anime change for your agendas? Imagine people wanting to escape real-world problems for fun to be hit with your forced politics and agendas. No rest, huh? Where Jamie replies, do you have a real question or do you just want to accuse me of stuff? Where the user would reply, you bragged in 2019 post about it, no false accusations here. Should have just done your job and translated accurately, not changing the core meaning of statements in anime for your personal beliefs. Where Jamie would reply saying, bragged about what? Writing literally every line ever that you don't like, that's your argument here? That is not their argument. They're talking about a specific set of lines, and Jamie's trying to make it sound like this person's accusing them of writing every bad localization ever, which is obviously not what they were doing. But the user would reply saying, why do you think you are entitled to change the context of statements in the anime? You don't own it, and you didn't write it, and no one wants to hear you complain about your imaginary patriarchy. People watch anime for escapism, not for your therapy sessions about how bad all men are. Where Jamie replies saying, so you genuinely believe I changed every line you haven't liked ever. Might want to reevaluate your reality, dude. Again, this first statement is not what they're saying, and she's once again trying to gaslight this user into saying something or believing they said something that they didn't. But then right here she says, might want to reevaluate your reality, dude. So they're talking about the Dragon Maid line and saying you're responsible for it, and she's heavily implying she's not, and then basically saying they're crazy for thinking that she might. Well, the user would reply to that saying, you didn't do the Dragon Maid patriarchy cringe joke. You didn't respond negatively to criticism and attack the fans. You didn't downplay your mistakes and dodge accountability by saying they hate me because I'm a woman. Imagine fans rooting for AI instead of you. And there's nothing here that is made up or an exaggeration. These are things that we know exist, whether it's through the screenshots or the Q&A. These things are not debatable. But Jamie would reply by saying, I normally don't respond positively to death threats, accusations, and assumptions. I wrote the line. I don't find it cringy. You do. That's fine. What else you got? So she wrote the line. She wrote the patriarchy line. She just spent all of these other tweets trying to gaslight people by implying that she didn't have anything to do with the Dragon Maid localization. But here she is when it's finally boiled down to a very specific question where she has no other response than to admit she wrote the line. So she was trying to gaslight everybody into thinking she had nothing to do with the change to the patriarchy joke But now, here it is. She's responsible. And again, look at the way she frames this whole thing, including something about death threats. This user is not giving you death threats. That's completely made up. Accusations and assumptions, nothing they said here is an accusation or an assumption. In fact, you confirm the things that they're asking you in your reply. Absolutely insane stuff. And this user would come back and say, do you really think people do not like you because it's just one line? You do understand that your outward hostile response at the conference made it 10 times worse, alienating the audience more than that one line did. Take an L and live with it. My God. Where Jamie would reply saying, oh, I don't care if people don't like me. Which seems like an obvious conclusion based on a lot of things she has said. She's definitely trying very hard to make people not like her. But at the end of the day, I think Jamie actually is very bothered by the fact that people are criticizing her and don't like her, because the proof is in the pudding. She is spending New Year's Eve responding to basically every single person who is replying to her. When I say basically every person, I mean the people who aren't blocked, which are just small accounts. She only replies to small accounts, like a lot of these localizers do. They run a blockchain on big accounts, like mine, for example, or larger accounts. I won't even say a big account. But yeah, they do that so they can argue with people who have single-digit follower counts so they can feel like they're winning. And that's how they're spending their time right now. It's obvious that it's bothering them. It's obvious it's under their skin. But yeah, they're going to try to sit here and deny it, when it also seems very clear that this is exactly what they want. So again, I talked about this in the last video, but she quote retweeted this old statement from 2019, basically co-signing the message of the original tweet that said, just remember, if there's any line changes in any anime, any script, anything ever that offend anyone who unironically use terms like SJW and feminist agenda, I wrote them. So you are very clearly implying that, or trying to give the implication that you are responsible for these localizations that are making people upset because they're just bad translations. And then on the other hand, when you're faced with criticism for the Dragon Maid localization, you're trying to heavily imply that you had nothing to do with the localization. It was actually a man who wrote the lines. But as it turns out, once someone boils you down with a very specific question about it, you have to admit that you were the one who wrote it, and you were caught in a lie again. But anyways, here's another supporting tweets of this whole gaslighting theme that a lot of these translators are participating in. There's a user here talking about some mistranslations in the, I believe it's Fire Emblem here, but we're going to focus on their quote tweet that says, a common point I see is that the outraged ones never really ask why. It's always localizers can't do their job right / have an agenda. It's never, maybe there's an issue with the Japanese line, so it couldn't be kept, because that would mean admitting the original is flawed. Now, the superiority attitude of translators is always on display. It's just becoming much more open these days, where they're basically saying, I know what's best. If there's something wrong or problematic with the Japanese version, I'm going to decide on behalf of everyone what we should do next. And again, we're talking about flawed things that must be changed because they're flawed. Well, you know, we look at the Dragon Maid example. Tell me how the original source material was in any way flawed. How did that patriarchy line fix anything? Well, they would quote this when they were getting criticized in the replies to that previous tweet. They would say, fun fact, translators don't decide. That gets decided for us because what's fine in one country isn't necessarily fine in another. Legal issues. Learn Japanese if you want a zero outside bias experience, but that's not what you want to hear, is it? So number one, this line here, just learn Japanese. That is not, again, a proper response to any of this. You don't need to be a chef to understand that your food wasn't cooked properly. Like, you don't have to speak Japanese to know that these localizations are terrible. And here's the thing. Are you really sure you want these people to learn Japanese? Just like with AI, this is another way to make your job go away. If you want people to learn Japanese, okay, fine, but they're going to not need you anymore as a translator. They're not going to need your localizations, and you're going to be out of a job. So I don't know why you're encouraging that sort of thing. But up top here, they say, fun fact, translators don't decide, implying that they have no decision-making authority over these localizations. It's something top-down, and they're just following orders. Well, everything Jamie has said earlier in this video implies the exact opposite. It sounds like that's exactly what they're doing on their own volition, based on their own personal beliefs or whatever they want to put in for political or personal reasons. And this other part here, I've been saving the best for last. Legal issues. They're blaming these localizations on legal issues. As people pointed out in the replies, oh sure, legal issues. Yes, this abomination was made because of legal issues, right? Or this stuff right here from Katrina, right? Management said I have to meet the yeet quota set by legal. Yeah, I don't think it's a legal issue when a line that says I'm going to the store is translated to I need to yeet my skibidi toilet down to the Whole Foods. Like, no, that is not for legal reasons, and nobody should believe that for a second. And you can pause. I'm not trying to pad the watch time here. If you want to read this word for word, some people are pointing out some stories like this with the legal issue question here, where basically there's a story with a former employee of Xseed Games where they saw characters being beaten down to their swimsuits in a fighting game, and because of the age of these characters, this employee was very uncomfortable. Now, what they did was they would go on to admit, well, this thing is not illegal and it's not harming anyone, but it's bothering me, the employee. So they went to their boss and eventually negotiated with the boss and got these things removed from this Japanese title just because they didn't like it personally. And they won. They gave in to that, and those characters were removed from the game. That has nothing to do with legality. It has to do with personal distaste or personal agendas or any of those sorts of things that localizers seem to thrive off of and want to include in anything they can get their hands on in anime, manga, and other Japanese products as well. But that's going to do it for this video. I know it was a bit of a long one, so I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. Please feel free to share all your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.